What would you do if you discovered a place so perfect, so pristine, that revealing its existence would guarantee its destruction? This impossible choice has faced explorers throughout history, and tonight, you'll experience exactly how such a decision can change not just one life, but the fate of something irreplaceable. The thumbnail you clicked on shows a moment of revelation that awaits us later in our journey. Good evening, travelers. Welcome to the island in the middle of nowhere, where tonight we'll embark on a journey that tests the very boundaries between ambition and preservation. Curiously enough, the most important discoveries in life are often the ones we choose to keep secret. As you settle in for this tale, allow the gentle rocking of our imaginary ship to carry you towards sleep. Captain Farron Crowley stood at the helm of the Windward Spirit, his weathered hands resting on the polished wheel as naturally as if they were extensions of the ship itself. Unlike many captains of his era who sailed for gold and glory, Crowley measured wealth in nautical miles and undiscovered horizons. His crew weren't mere sailors, but family, chosen companions bound by their shared love of the sea's mysteries. The morning sun caught in the salt-crusted edges of his beard as he watched the harbor of Port Callaway come into view. It was meant to be a routine stop, resupply, perhaps trade some of their modest findings, then back to the endless blue. But remarkably, fate had other plans. Captain called Eliza, his first mate, a woman whose navigation skills bordered on the supernatural. There's a messenger waiting at the dock. Fancy clothes. Duke's insignia, Crowley's eyes narrowed. Nobility rarely brought good fortune to men like him, who preferred freedom to fealty. The Duke of Westmoreland was not a patient man. In his grand study, with maps covering walls like trophies of conquered territories, he barely offered Crowley a seat before unrolling an ancient parchment across his mahogany desk. "The island in the middle of nowhere," the Duke declared, his voice reverent yet commanding. "Thought to be myth, until my scholars found this map fragment in an abandoned monastery. Legend speaks of a goblet kept in a tower at the island's center, a treasure beyond imagining." Crowley studied the fragmented map, noting the strange circular pattern of winds marked around the supposed location. "And you want me to retrieve this goblet?" "Precisely. Succeed and you'll have fame and fortune beyond your wildest dreams. Fail," the Duke's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Well, let's focus on success, shall we? What would you do if offered such a commission? Would you chase the promise of wealth, or would some instinct warn you away? Comment below what choice you'd make in Captain Crowley's position." As Crowley left the Duke's mansion, the parchment copy tucked inside his jacket felt strangely heavy. The island's location made no sense. Positioned in waters he'd sailed dozens of times without sighting land. An island in the middle of nowhere, indeed. But here's something few realize about legendary places: they don't wish to be found. They test those who seek them, revealing themselves only to the worthy. And worthiness, as our captain would soon discover, isn't measured by ambition, but by something far more profound. 3 weeks into their voyage, the Windward Spirit faced the first test. Approaching the coordinates from the Duke's map, they encountered not an island but a wall of storms that seemed to circle endlessly around an empty point in the ocean. "It's suicide to sail further," shouted Eliza over howling winds that had appeared from nowhere in otherwise calm seas. "No island is worth the lives of this crew." Crowley stood at the bow, rain lashing his face as he studied the unnatural storm barrier. The parchment had mentioned a riddle, a key to safe passage that now seemed their only hope. What exists where nothing should be? Crowley muttered, the realization dawning slowly. An island in the middle of nowhere, the word that names absence nowhere. Nowhere, Crowley shouted into the storm. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, like a curtain being drawn aside, the storm parted directly before them, revealing a narrow passage of calm waters leading toward nothing. Just more empty ocean. "Do we proceed, Captain?" Eliza asked, uncertainty in her voice for perhaps the first time since he'd known her. "We do," Crowley answered, though something in his gut whispered caution. Slowly, as they sailed through the passage, something extraordinary happened. The empty horizon began to shimmer, like heat rising from summer sands. The shimmer coalesced, solidified, and suddenly, impossibly, an island materialized before them, lush and green and perfect. Imagine witnessing the impossible, a place that defies the very maps you've trusted your life to. This moment changed everything Captain Crowley thought he knew about the world. Would you trust your eyes, or would you turn back, convinced you'd fallen victim to some maritime mirage? Like this video if you'd brave the unknown, or comment if you'd retreat to safer waters. The island that shouldn't exist was a vision of untouched perfection. As they anchored in a crystal-clear lagoon, the crew fell silent in collective awe. Birds of species unknown to any naturalist filled the air with melodic calls. Flowers in impossible colors cascaded down cliff faces. And most remarkably, animals that should have been predator and prey drank side by side from freshwater streams. "It's like the world before mankind," whispered Eliza, her usual pragmatism temporarily abandoned. Crowley assigned a minimal anchor watch and led a small party ashore. The island seemed to welcome them, the very air filled with scents so pure and sweet they made the head swim. At the island's center, just as the map had indicated, stood a slender tower of pale stone that seemed to grow from the earth rather than being built upon it. "The goblet is supposed to be at the top," Crowley explained to his chosen companions. Eliza, the ship's Dr. Montgomery, and young Riley, whose climbing abilities were unmatched. As they approached the tower, they discovered it had no visible door, just smooth, unbroken stone. "Another test," Montgomery suggested, adjusting his spectacles. The map mentioned announcing oneself to the tower. Crowley stepped forward, placing his palm against the cool stone. "I am Captain Farron Crowley of the Windward Spirit." An opening appeared, revealing a spiral staircase that wound upward through the tower's heart. The climb seemed to last both minutes and hours, time behaving as strangely as the island itself. When they finally reached the tower's summit, they found a circular room open to the sky, empty save for a simple stone pedestal at its center. Upon it sat the goblet, unadorned silver that somehow caught light from angles that shouldn't exist. "After all this, it looks rather ordinary," Riley remarked, disappointment evident. "The most powerful things often do," Crowley responded, approaching the pedestal cautiously. "But here's what separates the truly extraordinary from mere legend. The moment of truth arrives not when you find what you seek, but when you understand why it was hidden in the first place." When Captain Crowley's fingers closed around the goblet, the world around him dissolved. He stood not on the island but in the Duke's mansion, watching as the nobleman raised the goblet in triumph before assembled dignitaries. "With this, we can locate other hidden lands, pristine resources waiting to be claimed," the Duke proclaimed. The vision shifted, showing the island being stripped of its wonders, trees felled, strange animals captured or killed, the perfect harmony shattered forever. Then another vision formed. Crowley himself, wealthy beyond measure, renowned as the discoverer of the century's greatest find. Famous, respected, and haunted by the knowledge of what had been lost. The visions faded, leaving him gasping in the tower room, the goblet cold in his hands and his companion staring at him with concern. "Captain," Eliza's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you well?" Crowley looked down at the goblet, then out through the tower's opening at the perfect island spread below them. The choice before him crystallized with painful clarity. "I saw what happens if we return with this," he said quietly. "The Duke doesn't want it for its beauty or history. He wants it as a key to find other hidden places, to exploit them." Montgomery frowned. "But the reward would cost more than money could ever repay," Crowley interrupted. He turned the goblet in his hands, watching how it caught the light. "This island exists in perfect balance. Everything in harmony. No hunting, no destruction. Just being." Riley looked confused. "So we just leave it?" "After coming all this way, sometimes," Crowley said slowly, "the greatest discovery is knowing when to keep a secret." He carefully placed the goblet back on its pedestal. "We tell the Duke the map was wrong. The island doesn't exist. We protect this place by forgetting we ever found it." As they descended the tower, each lost in thought, the stone door sealed behind them as if it had never opened. Back aboard the Windward Spirit, Crowley gathered his entire crew. "I'm asking something difficult of you all," he began. "To forget a discovery that could make us famous. To protect something perfect by keeping its existence secret." He explained what he'd seen, the destruction that would follow if the world learned of the island. One by one, his crew, his family, nodded their agreement. "Some treasures," Eliza said finally, "are worth more left where they belong." The storm barrier parted for their departure as easily as it had for their arrival. Once through, Crowley looked back to see only empty ocean where the island had been, hidden once more from unworthy eyes. The Duke was furious at their failure, of course. He accused Crowley of incompetence, even treachery. But without proof, there was nothing he could do beyond withholding payment and spreading rumors that the once great captain had lost his edge. Curiously enough, these rumors bothered Crowley not at all. In the years that followed, the Windward Spirit continued its explorations, discovering ordinary islands and trading routes that brought modest but honest success. If sometimes at night Crowley stood at the rail, looking toward coordinates that appeared empty on every map, none of his crew ever mentioned it. And remarkably, the greatest wealth Captain Crowley ever found wasn't gold or fame, but the peace of knowing that somewhere, hidden from the world's greed, perfect harmony continued undisturbed. He had chosen preservation over exploitation, wisdom over wealth. As you drift toward sleep tonight, perhaps consider what islands of perfection might still exist, protected by those wise enough to keep their secrets. What treasures are more valuable, left undisturbed than possessed? Next week, we'll explore another hidden wonder as we journey to meet the Storm Keepers. Secret, where we'll discover an ancient order of guardians who, like Captain Crowley, have dedicated their lives to protecting the world's most magical places from those who would exploit them. Did Captain Crowley eventually join their ranks? Subscribe and return to find out how his choice on the island led to an even greater adventure. Until then, may your dreams be filled with undiscovered islands, and may you always choose preservation over possession.